OCO, welcome to the Red Road East. I'm your host, Feerce Truth-Seeker. The Red Road East is an indigenous TV program dedicated to archiving and preserving the history, legacy, and culture of the original peoples of the Americas east of the Mississippi River and the Caribbean. Hey, it's been a long time, I know, but I'm here now. Life has you around this time, between Christmas and New Year's, everything is kind of chaotic, you know, and just, you know, life's challenges in general, living here in New York, it keeps you in survival mode. So, you're forced to, take care of a whole bunch of things, multitasking and things of that nature. So I'm sorry for not doing any shows for a few weeks. But anyway, I have a treat for you now. And today's show is entitled Talks with Wolves, Brooklyn's American Indian store of the 90s. And any of you who lived in New York during that time, who is indigenous, you know that this particular store, that was like the meetup spot, and it was a place where, we really cherished because it was the only one of its kind in the neighborhood. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on the store owner, Stephen Talks with Wolves. Stephen.
Hey there, brother OCO.
OCO, yeah, man. It's been a long time, man.
It has. It has.
Yeah, man, that store, you know, even up until this day, people remember that store and talk about it, you know. And I'll open it before we start talking about that. I'll open up the show. Open up the show by allowing you to introduce yourself, um, talk about where you're from, who you are, and your nation, things of that nature, and then we'll proceed with the line of questioning.
All right. Well, my name is Stephen Wilson. I am born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, in the original battlegrounds of Fort Greene,
Mm,
back in the good old days. And my nation, from the bloodlines and everything else that we researched and dealt with from the roles, we are the Seligy people here in the East Coast. And you call us the Cherokees, and even go way, way back. They say the people from the mountains. And so that's where my family is from. And we also have our slave records that show the plantation that we came from, that took in the natives and mixed them with the Africans, or American, Negro. And from there, and then how I Talk to Wolves came about is, and when I was starting to learn about my bloodlines. Um, my uncle introduced me, to a native of the Eastern Delaware Nation, Wyandotte. He was a sachem, and introduced me to traditions and concepts. And I did my vision quest, and we could spend a whole show on the vision quest.
mm.
So I did the vision quest, and thus after the 7 day process, I was named Talks with Wolves, um, and the journey started from there.
Wow. Yeah, man. Now, what? Wait, let me get you off of solo here. What inspired you to open that store?
Well, at the time, I was working corporate, and again, I was just trying to find my history. And through the spirit, the roads were opening up, And so I was working for a bank, and at that time they had just started doing outsourcing. So I lost my position, and then my great uncle who lived in Brooklyn, out of nowhere, called me like a few months and said, "Hey, I understand that you've been, you found out a lot about family culture and history, and you've been doing powwows and kind of learning from that business aspect of selling and so forth." He said, "I have a store in his building. He owned a brownstone. He had a store, and originally it was a restaurant. And he was like, 'How would you like to run your first store?'" And I just took a deep breath. I knew nothing about running a business from that in that form, and
Mm.
I just then I just went in and started setting up, and a little bit of his guidance and other folks. Talks with Wolves, indigenous art and culture came alive
Wow.
in Bedford Stuyvesant. I had
Yeah.
no idea where my name Talks with Wolves was going to go. I just knew it was something that Spirit um, opened that door for me because I wanted to learn. And they always say, be careful what you ask for, uh, because once you open that, once Spirit's really, and I think Spirit opens doors when the Spirit understands you are truthfully genuine.
Mm.
You when you're really about a path that you don't know, but you're going on faith, and then you are held responsible. And then I felt that this was a great time, and I just like, wow, fantastic. And I went in, opened my, got all the business papers that I needed and everything, learned from that process. And then from there, um, opened the store.
Now, what year did the store close? You started in what, 90 what?
Yeah, I always have to think back on that. I know it's around, I would say, let's say close to the mid 90s.
Okay.
And the store closed in 2000. So let's say 93 to 2000.
Mm. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that particular store, if correct me if I'm wrong, that was the only indigenous store in Brooklyn. Am I right on that or am I wrong?
I want to say, I almost want to say wrong, but I'm not really. I believe that in that time period, indigenous culture stores, well, let me get this right. Native American stores, the way they put it, was coming out
Mhm.
all over the place. Yeah, it was a
Okay.
big thing in the 90s. You know that. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in Manhattan, a couple of Manhattan, I believe,
I know about the Manhattan.
right, that huge one. And then they
Right.
had one, I think, in Park Slope.
Really?
Park Slope or some. I remember there was another one in Brooklyn. I just can't remember where. But
Mm.
I was the only, and then my store. Now you're talking about from indigenous to really from a cultural perspective of really teaching the culture, understanding the culture, being ran by the person with bloodlines connected to the indigenous people, having classes, and then because sometimes combining other art from other cultures to show the similarities.
Hmm.
Yes, from that aspect, I was the matter of fact, I was the only one in New York that was doing it that way.
Mm. Okay.
And then,
Yeah.
classes talking about we had classes from understanding the Middle Passage to teaching the Seligi language to drumming to all kinds of stuff, and then getting invited to schools and teaching cultural aspects of it and traditions and concepts. Um, from that aspect, I was the only one.
Yeah, yeah. I remember everybody was in there doing stuff. I remember Chief Sitting Sun
Yes.
being there and
Mhm.
Lonnie, some of everybody was in there.
Yes, and just I met a lot of the nations of people coming to that store. And the
Mm.
way I did it was I was on Fulton Street originally, and I would put speakers outside and just play native music.
I remember that.
That's how that's how it caught a lot of people. It's like, what is this drumming? What is this? And during native songs, and then at night, especially at nighttime, I would close like 9 o'clock at night. I
Hmm.
would put on light flute music, and that really people always say it always calmed the neighborhood down,
Yep.
even especially in the wintertime. You can hear the flute music a few blocks, but it was just so calming. So
Yeah.
that was my marketing strategy of getting people in
Mm.
there. And of course, when they came in, it was a pleasant surprise, um, and it was a cultural awakening. Uh,
Hmm.
it wasn't easy at first, and we could talk about that in a few.
Mm. Yeah. Matter of fact, it was the music that caught me because I was walking down Fulton Street one day and I just heard this music, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, you know, and and because I'm always pumping the native music at home
Yeah,
anyway. So I said,
right.
oh man, I ain't gotta wait until I get home to listen to some music. I said, let me go in here and vibe a little bit. And that's when I saw the sign that said Talks with Wolves. I said, oh shoot, a
Yeah.
native store here in Brooklyn. And I
It's
went in and
bedtime,
then,
no less. Yes.
and it got me, man. You drew me in with that music.
Hey, I had people coming out of cabs. I met a group of singers, which was hilarious. And they were in a cab and heard the music and told the cab, pull over. Just pull over. Paid them, came out. And we know we were friends ever since, you know. So it's some great story behind that whole music thing.
Oh man. Now what made you choose Bed-Stuy as opposed to, or even Brooklyn for that matter, as opposed to like Harlem, or somewhere in Manhattan?
You know what? That's a good question. I had no idea where I was going to go with this.
Mm,
Again, I was just doing powwow circuits, traveling, camping, and just selling and learning about the aspect. And again, my uncle who had a store, it was originally called Scales Restaurant.
mm,
Harry Scales, he's my great uncle, and he had heard about it and knew a lot of the family history that nobody knew he knew.
mm,
And he had the store, and he's like, "Hey, I got the store. I'm not doing anything with it." I mean, he was tracking me down. He was calling his sister, which is my grandmother. He was calling my mom. It's like, "Hey, where's Steven?" And the word got to him, and then he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I've got a store, and why don't you come into this community and rattle some cages a little bit, and come in and open up this store?"
mm,
And I was like, if spirit said that's what he meant to be, then so be it. And
mm.
that's what I did. And and I've been kind of riding that wind ever since. Again, not knowing what's going to happen, understanding the strategies of business and communication and business etiquette and ethics. And, I had to really learn what it is to run a business which was not about profit, but yes, it is about profit because you need the profit to keep money for business. But
Mhm.
it was about a cultural awareness. It was about getting our people to understand another aspect of their history. Because what made Bed-Stuy so interesting was, as we know, Bed-Stuy is a very African American uh, cultural community. They were not dealing with anything with Native culture.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think a lot of our African American communities in general at that time, we were just holding on to being African Americans, Negro, colored, whatever you want to call us. And so to bring a whole different aspect to our culture, that was the challenge. Because, and from there, when I opened the store, uh, when people come in, and I'll probably get in trouble for this. When people come in, when they saw me, I was not what they expected.
Mm.
A lot of the native stores were ran by people, I will say, non-color, without pointing any,
Right,
um,
right.
non-color, and buildings that were not owned by people of color. And then, so when they saw me, and at that time, I had locks in my hair.
I
Uh,
remember.
yeah, had locks in my hair, and the first people, people like, what are you trying to do? What are you doing? And it was a challenge. And then, again, being an African centric community, and so the one thing about Bed-Stuy was when you speak with them, you sit down and talk to them and explain historical facts to them,
Hmm.
then they start sharing. They're like, oh yeah, I remember the triangle slave trade. And it's like it's not was just Africans, it was people of the Caribbeans that
Right,
was you had natives in the United States that were brought back to African as slaves.
right.
Uh, the triangle slave trade was much deeper than just Africans.
Right.
You have the Caribs, and then we start talking to people in the Caribbean islands. They were like, yeah, the Caribs. Nobody was
Mm-hmm.
talking about the Caribs at that time, indigenous to them. Then you had, you know, the Arawaks and the Tainos, and everybody. So it really started getting to understand the mixture of our culture. But when I
Mm-hmm.
first went into that community, uh, as something very new, but yet very ancient, if that makes sense. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
People originally told me my own, people call it in the community. It's like you're not going to last. It's just this is not going to work. They,
Really?
yeah, they said you may last a year or two, and that's it.
Mm.
And it was like you should try something different and everything else. And I stuck to my guns. I was like, this is if that is the case, then that'll be spirit telling me that, not you. But I understood where that was coming from. We're so fast as a people to not push us to be better. We're
Mm-hmm.
always looking for the challenges. We're looking at the negative first, not the positive.
Exactly.
And so, and I was like, well, let's see what happens. And then within 3 years, I moved around the corner in Bedside because I expanded, and I was in the community for seven. No, they said 1 or 2 years. I was there for 7.5 years,
Right. Right. That's right.
and then from there, through business matters and everything else, uh, it was time to do something to grow beyond that, but still keep the foundation of what it is. So from
Mm-hmm.
there, I decided to go because by that time I was going to schools, doing lectures, doing art projects, talking about the indigenous cultures of the First Nations, introducing drumming. Remember, we used to do the drumming at the store, and people bring their
Right.
instruments, and we'd be drumming. We'd be rocking that store 11, 12 o'clock at night. People loved it. It was like it was so great to them. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know upstairs, but banging up, and but people that invited people to come. I mean, and it was, and after a while, people start bringing, African instruments, and Asian instruments, and
Mm,
we just started. It was an orchestra, and
mm,
I tell people traditionally that is what we call classical music. You think classical music is European? I said no. Classical music means music originally from that culture.
mm-hmm.
That's what
Exactly.
classical music is.
Yeah.
Uh, we had our own classical music, and then, but again, one from other things, I had moved around the corner. I was around the corner for about 3.5, 4 years, and it was time. It was time. So I decided to go non for profit. And again, when I was telling people I'm going non for profit, I got the negative aspect again. Non for profit is too
Mm,
hard. It's not going to work.
mm,
Especially of color, so forth and so on, and especially to what you wanted to do, because I was going to take it to another level.
mm,
And so from there, I I said, well, the spirit's saying this is the direction you originally was supposed to go. You take steps. You don't go leaps and bounds. And then
mm,
I decided, all right, let me try. And then through some legal help that I got, TWW Inc. was formed.
mm,
Originally, Toss with Wolves, but it was like, no, do TWW Inc. because it could be confusing. So I put
mm,
TWW Inc. and I've been around since 2002 as a non-for-profit.
mm,
So you're looking at overall, what was that, like 20 something years as a non-for-profit, 7 years as a sole proprietor. So I've been doing this close to 30 years now.
mm.
And as
Yeah.
a non-for-profit, we go to schools. We still teach about Native culture, but it's expanded. It's
Mhm,
expanded. Now we go within the Native culture, or Black history, African American history, and we just take it from different aspects to people, to culture, to traditions, to concepts. So anything from, we've taught Asian dancing, we
mm,
we taught Caribbean dancing and culture. Uh,
mm,
we've gotten into people of color like Nina Simone, the Black experience from that aspect. So that's what it grew into educational programming, and also, and then within that, a lot of our people, or people in general, we have mental health challenges, and
mhm,
So we decided to also do creative art therapy programs.
Mm.
And mostly target socially, economically challenged communities, people at risk, poor communities. And we really expand our programs, to help them, to achieve to their highest abilities. And we also do professional development for, people to get a bit different aspect. We teach business strategy. Uh, I just been moving forward. I've been moving forward, but it all started doing that vision quest, um, and taking it from there.
Mm. So when you closed the store, was it because of the rent? Uh, what was the reason for closing the store?
It was time. It was time. The owner of the building, he felt that it was time to do something, and I felt that it was time. Something was calling that you have to now go another step,
Okay.
and it could, what, and I will backtrack. It could have been about rent because he was doing me a favor as a small store, um, and and then at that time, downtown Brooklyn was being, built up, and we already know that whole, that whole,
Oh, yeah.
all that going on, coming up to Bed-Stuy and everything else. Uh, but it was time. It was just simply time. And I didn't feel bad about it. I didn't feel bad. I felt that a lot was proven just to be there 7 years, where people didn't think I was going to last that long.
Mm.
And my thing was, there is such a thing when you've outgrown something.
Right, right, right.
And the question is, if you outgrow it, then what do you do? Do
Yeah.
you do you just drop it, say, been there, done it, moved on? Or do
Mm.
you say, let me take this to another level? And
Yeah.
again, I didn't know nothing about non for profit, nothing at all. And
Really.
I think it was my mom. She was working for a law firm. She was talking about, what else you want to do, and and with the non for profit, again, knew nothing about it. I did my studies, and then I found an organization that kind of will guide me legally, Lawyers Alliance, and it gave me a pro bono. And they said, "All right, what do you want to do?" They guide me of how I want to think. And the one thing about when you go to the next phase, it's interesting because it really makes you think in ways you didn't think you would think.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the talent inside of you until it comes out and what you want to do and how you want to do it, and how really committed are you in doing it. You know,
Yeah.
I was committed through my spirit, and say, this is what you are meant to do.
Mm.
And I took full responsibility for it. And I've always felt that I did not speculate, I did not put a limitation on it. My thought was, wherever you want me to go, you know what I can handle, you know what I could do. And, and of course, there are prices to pay behind that. And I'm not going to get into that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Personal prices that you pay,
Mm.
the sacrifices that have to be made, and everything else. Uh, like you said, you step through that door. So now
Yeah.
what?
Mm.
So like, now what you gonna do? As I come, what you gonna do? So my thing was, all right, let's do this. And it's a great journey. It's very humbling because you get people that come back to you years later and say, "Hey, I remember when you came to my school, this program, and thank you, and you helped me
Mm.
that way." It's not an overnight gratification.
Yeah.
It's not, because you have to. Things will come to you. I mean, it's gratifying when people come in and support and
Mm-hmm.
everything else, but when you see the programs, and I was like, "Man, this is what this was really about." The store was great. And, people always ask me, will you ever open up a store again? Not in today's price range. It's expensive.
Mm.
Um, do I miss it? Absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. But that was just a stepping stone, I feel, to take it to another level. To say, this is what we have in store for you, and you take it from there. Now, people will still come to me and see if I could get things for them. I still do that every so often, and
Mm.
that open doors to something else. And again, in program, art education programs, anything from visual. to photography to dance to theater. Um, we've done a lot. We've done, and we're doing a lot. And again, I was like, this is about healing in so many different aspects of culture through, whether it's mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, historically, even religiously to some degree. But what made us work was that in learning about our culture, and then when I started doing the art education programs, there was stuff that was coming up from an educational perspective I did not know. And that to me is the fun part of this traveling. You have to be open to learn. You have to stay ignorant if that makes sense, because the ability to learn, just to compare, to see what is similar, what is different, and it's all good, which is why all types of religious people from different backgrounds were able to come to my store. We were able to share things,
Mm,
uh, whether it was Christian, Islam, Buddha, whatever, Buddhism, and there's similarities. I mean, when I first learned about quilt making, we know quilt making from an African perspective, African American perspective, especially through the slave trade, where they was using quilting to send out messages that the slave owners didn't know. They just thought it was designs, but found out that um, some of those symbols were native, not African,
yeah.
because they intertwined with the native culture. I mean, so those little things, and that was what we were doing in Talks of Wolves, when people was talk about history, and then and then we sit there and really talk about the historical facts. Then it was like, wow, let me, they would go home. It's like, wow, let me talk to my family. Let's,
Mm,
because native culture was swept under the rug,
mm,
especially with people of color,
yeah.
especially with us. It was taboo for
Exactly.
for a lot of historical reasons. And
Mm,
the good thing was that, I knew an author, William Lauren Katz, who
yeah.
wrote Black Indians and Black New York, and great man. Unfortunately, he passed a few years ago, and he
Right.
kind of started that trend of people of color who, because technically we're not black, but that's a whole nother
Yeah.
thing.
Mm,
And that how government or people, culture, or the people that came in and conquered this country, the Turtle Island, and used this whole color barrier to separate us. People, in that aspect, really thought that natives looked a very very specific way, and
yeah.
I was like, please stop watching Hollywood, and
Exactly.
just stop doing that.
Yeah.
Yes, they are people, their color, they had straight hair, curly hair, locky hair, hell, like me, with no hair now, we have
Yeah.
pictures, man. It's a photographer named Curtis, who in I think the 1800s has pictures, black and white, of natives.
Edward Curtis.
Yes, and he had a picture. It's one particular picture that he has with an elder. He's wearing a buckskin or deerskin or whatever regalia, traditional, and had cowrie shells all over it. And everybody
Right.
knows cowrie shells are not from here; they're from Africa and then maybe the Caribbean islands as well. But and then, so the
Yeah.
idea is that where
Caribbean.
do cowrie shells come from? And I'm like, and even the Aztecs said that, in the old Aztec writings, they said they used to go across the seas and trade with their olive skinned brothers. And what people didn't understand was olive skin. Olives are green. I said, true, good olives are black.
Exactly. That's a fact.
And so
I
that's
eat them
how.
all the time.
So and this is the Aztecs. The Aztecs said they went across the seas and traded with Africans, the Moors and whoever else. So,
Hmm.
you always go to Ivan, Ivan Versailles, they came for Columbus.
Right. Right.
So the 90s was a big push on getting people of color to expand their thinking about what we are. We're not just, now we could always argue the fact or debate, I'm not gonna like to use the word argue, but debate that everything started from Africa. Okay, but that's just a point of reference, because traditionally Africa was not named Africa. That came after Africanus, the
Yeah.
conqueror. Africa was named something else prior to that. So we use names as a point of reference by location. So if you're talking about here in the coast, I said that's very possibly true. Nope. If that's how you feel, some natives believe that some of those nations started here. There's a
Right.
whole out west that they felt that they came from there. This is
Mm.
Mother Earth, you know. And so my theory has always been this: I don't know. You can only go by what you find in artifacts.
Right. Right.
One of the oldest places in Africa, no debate. What culture could have possibly rooted from? That's all fine. I always felt that the creator is a gardener. I always felt that the creator didn't just plant just one seed in one particular area. I believe that the creator planted seeds around the world, and
Hmm.
that's how the creator grew its garden.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You know, that's my theory.
Right. Right.
We don't know until after we pass away. We get to the critical, like, you need to explain this to me how this works. But that's the fun part of it. And to me, it's no
Hmm.
art, it's it's just about a theory. Because
Right.
it's all theories, but we find what we could find. And then from there, we take it from there. It could be a combination. I could say, yes, my parents from, I could say it's from Africa. But my home is here in Brooklyn. And from Brooklyn, I have my own home. I have my own uh, traditions I've taken, but I built my own traditions, concepts. My new plant is here. So no, I always tell people, no, if no matter where we feel we came from, the point is to honor the cultures that represent who we are. Really,
Right. Right.
I don't care if you have 1% native, 5%. If you're 95, the point is, even if you have 1%, that makes you part native.
Hmm.
Period. It's part of who we are. Now, how you live your life and how you go from there, then that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how I ran my store on those concepts of you're going to learn, you're going to share information. You could It's okay to disagree and it's okay to agree.
Right.
It's
Right.
okay. It's um, and to me, it's about based on opinion through your life experience. I can't tell you your life experience. I can only tell you about my life and what I've seen, what I've experienced,
Hmm.
and I'm sharing that with people, and then what I my belief, and a lot of it was fun. You know, when I talked about the native being, I think creator, planted seeds around the world as a gardener, people used to laugh. It's like we never heard that theory before. I said, well, do you plant one seed or do you plant seeds? They feel like a good gardener plants more than one seed. I say exactly. And we could take it
Well,
however.
that's a theory that's being thrown around now. Anthropologically, they're talking about multi-regional, you
Hmm.
know, aspect, in terms of man, origins. That's one theory that's circulating around. So you're not, too far off with that,
Hmm.
because it's
It's
been
and it's fun. And
debated.
again, it's just a theory. It's just a theory, and you can take
Exactly.
it from a religious aspect. If you read the Bible, like when Cain killed Abel, and Cain was thrown out, but Cain didn't want to be among the others. You always ask, well, who are the others? If they were the first,
Exactly.
then who are the others? Uh,
Exactly.
you have the Israelites who say that the first nations or the lost nation of of Israel, and so forth. Uh, that's also been debatable. It's like the only problem with that theory is that there are symbols of stuff that were here prior to the Israelites coming. Did they come and mix in? Most likely, they probably did, which is why you see similar symbols. But the Aztecs, again, they were here before that, and they were talking about cultures and symbols that came before they got here.
Yeah.
So people are trying to find, and they're going by theories and everything else. Um, but again, with the traditions and concepts, even. Um, which is a big thing as well. Um, like the LG community. There's an old history to them, and but of course it's because of how it's been formed through government and formed through people, and they're fighting for their rights now to be heard and spoken and everything else. But traditionally, they had a community. They were called the Winkies, within that culture, they had communities, for people who were called they were called cross dressers. And
Hmm.
now the LG is trying to figure out how I've heard in arguments from the LG community that well they were trans then. Yes, but your terminology is just a little bit off.
Right. Right. Right.
Uh, and especially when it came to the form of using certain pronouns and all, to describe. Um, but they have roles in our society. They were very spiritual. They have very specific roles in the communities, in the nations, African and Native. But again, because of
Yeah.
conquerors and that they, and a lot of we have a lot to learn about within our own culture.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pride to it, and even in the form of when you're talking about in the LG community, the when they say that two spirit.
Two
Now,
spirit.
right now they're saying, oh, two spirit are it's just a person with male and female, and they go a little bit deeper. But from an original perspective, we're saying yeah, it's from a cultural aspect, but they really don't tell what the cultural aspect is. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just say, oh, it's from an old tradition, but they're not saying it. And I always find it interesting when people who are and I'll put it that way, who are non-native, constantly are trying to tell us about our history.
Right. Right.
Um, and there is only one, and I'm gonna say this, and among the people, especially people of color, within our culture, you have to also embrace the societies that was within our culture because it helped build our culture.
Mm.
So, like I said, the LG community, they have roles. They play pivotal roles in our society. Um, Spiritual roles. Um, One of their roles were giving the spiritual names of the babies. They were part of the medicine society. They were part of the warrior society. They were part of our teachers. They were, and again, they had societies within there, townships even. Um, and and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell people so we can kind of get this out the way what two spirit means, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Two spirit, there's only one. Yes, it's male and female energy that you recognize, but that's in everybody. We all have male and female energy,
Right.
spirit within us. The difference is that is not originally what two spirited meant.
Mm.
Two spirited was very specific to an individual who was so unique that they had physical male and female parts together. And then because they were so unique in that way, they were originally called two spirit because they felt that they understood both male and female, and they truly had the spirit of male and female. And they were used for ceremonies specifically. And they were that unique. Do you know what that name is? What that person is called?
I mean, oh, you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
Hermaphrodite.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, you talking about in terms of that having the parts? Yeah, and that
Yep.
as a matter of fact, I was
That's
just
why I
about
said male and
right.
female parts. I was trying
That,
to say,
that's that's what I was gonna ask you if you were
yes,
talking about hermaphrodites. That was gonna be
yeah,
my
they
next
are
question.
the true.
Yeah.
That is what two spirit originally came from, because they were so unique because people felt that they had two true spirit, and they were able to work with both spirits, and that's what originally two spirit came from.
Mm.
Yeah, and there are two different type of hermaphrodites. You have one with female features that have male and female parts, and one with male features with
Right.
male and female parts.
Mm.
Um, and they were used for certain ceremonies because they felt they could connect to both the spiritual plane of male and female.
Mm.
Very unique. They were and
Mm.
very again very spiritual, um, and very looked upon with honor. So people, that is what two spirit originally came from.
Mm. Nice, nice. Now I wanted to. We have about we have about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
I wanted you to talk about this Nina Simone project.
The Nina Simone project came about because as TWW Inc., I wanted to expand more about our Black experience.
So you were the visionary for that.
Yes.
See, I had no idea because I had heard about it. Matter of fact, one of my cousins had told me about it. You know, when it was at that time, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh wow, interesting. but I had no idea that you were the visionary of
I was
it.
the visionary for it. Now there have been many locations, many states, many schools, and everything that's done Nina Simone projects. What As far as New York, as far as the way I did it, I looked upon other locations. I was like, we could do more with Nina Simone. So what I did was I came up with the concept of understanding Nina Simone, even from a personal aspect. You know, she suffered through mental health as well, but
Mm,
I really wanted to study her songs. What was her songs really about?
mm,
It was about the social economic challenges of the people of color, and the political challenges and the justice system, all these things in her songs. And so I decided that we were going to make this into a complete history lesson of how she lined up her songs to the civil rights movement. And it became a lesson, a curriculum. And then from there, kids would listen, and parents would listen to the songs. They would do, or other groups, as when we did our show at the end, and they would perform to Nina Simone and also do reenactments. So let's say her famous song, well, all her songs are famous, but the one that really stands out is The Four Women. And Sarah, Sophronia, Sweet Thing, and Peaches. And so with those four women, they all have four challenges at that time. And so what I did was we had parents to study the Song of the Four Women and do a theatrical reenactment of why the four women were who they are or who they were. What were their challenges? Why was Sweet Thing a prostitute? Why was Peaches so rebellious? Why was Sophronia, carrying the burden of being mixed blood because in her song, the Nina Simone song, Sophronia came from her mother being raped by a white man. Aunt Sarah with the racist and prejudice of being a maid, a person of color. So there's historical factors to it. And so what the parents did was they studied that song and did a theatrical piece, four parents, four women, did represented each person and did a reenactment and gave us a more breakdown of why those people were who they were. Um, and it was powerful. It was very, very powerful.
mm,
And that's what we do. And Nina Simone, everybody knows Nina Simone being very African centric.
yeah.
She's all about the black experience. And, you know, and and that's what we want to go with. It's not just about talking about African culture, native culture. We want to get into the people of color and say, hey, our that's a tradition concept, but let's talk about the history. Let's talk about our challenges. Let's talk about the dancing. How did all this different type of music come about? Like it's been said that jazz came traditionally from African native music that was formed. How the hoofing, we know it's tap dancing. How African all these different things, gospel. How a lot of it was tribal songs. It's tribal songs. All these different things. How do we go beyond what we in our tradition and understand how it is as part of our life today, how it influenced hip hop, blues, jazz, all those different things.
Yeah. And so you do a lot of work with children.
I do. Most of our work we did with parents and adults as well, but I would say a majority of our work is from kids from K to 12th grade. And we have a
Mm,
mentorship program that we do. We go to schools to help, those kids, especially in high school, promoting them to go to college or get a career. So we have
mm,
mentorship programs that helps them, challenge themselves to say, where are we going and how are we going and what we want to do better with their lives. So we do a lot of different programs within the DOE. We get contracted and then we come in and do those programs.
mm. So you don't have right now. Do you have a physical base of operations?
At times we work out. Main office is at the Masonic Temple, but ever since COVID happened, we've kind of like we just go to locations now,
Okay.
uh, and do we don't have a storefront anymore where they'll just have those programs there. We get contracted to go into the schools and work the programs from there.
Mm. Okay. And are you on any social media platforms?
You can find us on Facebook. Just hit TWW Inc. Or if you want to, you could go to our website at twwinc.org and find me there, and you'll see the history. We've got photos and video of programs that we're doing and done, um, and hopefully we'll be around for many years to come.
Okay, yeah, I'm putting that in the chat right now. Just give me 1 second here. twwinc.org. Okay, and that's on the on face on that's your website.
Website, and they'll be able to find us every place from there. We're not hard to find.
Okay,
We're
okay,
not hard to find, not
yeah.
at all. You can go through Google and just type in TWW Inc. Talks with Wolves. You'll find us from there as well, from
Mhm.
Facebook. But that's what we've done, and that's the fun part about sharing. Like talking about the LG community and talking about different religions and everything. And really just sit down and we're sharing things. And yes,
Mhm.
history, good, bad, and ugly. It
Right,
is
right,
what it is,
yeah.
and concepts and ideologies and just theories,
Mm.
great theories, and and if people could understand that, not feel threatened by other people's thoughts, because it's not about telling somebody you're right or wrong. It's like, I'm not telling you that. I'm just saying this is my idea, and what Make Talks with Wolves work and TWW Inc. work, we listen to everybody and we share information and we find the similarities, which makes it fun actually, and
Mm.
then find the differences, which also makes it fun. But nobody's threatened by anybody's theories. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
That's why we were able to stay as long as we are and still moving forward.
Mm.
I mean, we even broke down some barriers among our own racism and prejudice among our own people.
Mm.
Of people
Yeah.
of color. So whether you're Caribbean, whether you're Native, African, African American, whatever, we have our own issues.
Mm.
So we have to be able to, deal with that.
Mm.
And so when we I work with all, artists from different aspects, whether they're European, whether they're Caribbean, whether it's Native, where and it, you know, and they share our mission. It's about education. It's about people being enlightened. It's about, from education perspective, that students are doing better. Their developmental skills are being heightened, and we're using the arts to have them grow.
Mm.
And that deals with history. It deals with a combination of history, traditions, concepts, theories, thoughts, goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, Stephen, it was really a pleasure having you on here.
Brother, it was
And
good to see you again.
yeah, man. I remember I ran into you at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in the summer. Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, we know each other. We know each other.
And what was funny was on our way to BAM, my father, we drove past where your store used to be. He said, "Yeah, remember that's where your boy's store used to be at." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I remember that, man. I'm so sad that the store is gone."
Same day we hooked up. It was
Yep.
crazy. And that's how spirit works. That's
Yeah.
how spirit works. People always talk about that store and what happened. I'm like, I didn't disappear. I'm just not in the forefront like you're so used to seeing me being. I said, you know what? Sometimes it's good to be behind the doors because sometimes you get more
Mm,
stuff done.
yeah.
And it's okay when people find out that, hey, you're still alive and kicking and everything. But the store was, again, it was a lot of fun. It was a good catalyst to do what we're doing now,
That's true.
uh, and it expanded minds, to really explore our culture and maybe in a different way, but
Mm,
still embrace who we are, but also embrace other parts of who we are as well. Because the thing that we learned was that some cultures were swept under the rug because that wasn't the thing to talk about or to deal with, and
mm,
that came to a point was now it's time to move that rug and get that dust and dirt, from under there, and show the floor and say, hey, we got a beautiful floor here, folks.
yeah.
Show off that floor and that history and everything, and it's
Well,
all good.
it was really, for me, it was really important because outside of, when you go to the powwows and stuff like that, then you come back. I was living in Brooklyn at that time,
Right.
so, you come from the powwows and stuff like that. And a lot of times you don't see, you know, um, other people in the indigenous community until you go to another powwow,
Right.
So that was another place that I could go to in between that time.
It kind of worked as a buffer, sort of
Yeah.
kind of. We would deal with our own challenges. I remember when I first opened the store, people come and say, "Why are you trying to be native? What's that?" I mean, it was real, but I get it because at that time we were really just being African American. We were embracing our African culture, and it never dawned on us that we're more than that.
Yeah.
And it's not about one being better than the other. It's not about that.
Mhm.
It's about just embracing all. Do you hug your mother and only hug one part of her? No, when you hug your mother, you hug everything that she is, or you hug your dad, everything that he is, and that's what that we were trying to just do.
Mhm.
Uh, really just get everybody to embrace everything who they are, but really open the mind to really studying it and understand there's good, there was bad, and there was ugly, and
Mhm.
something a lot of stuff that we did to ourselves as well. Now we could put blame and figure other stuff, but that's a whole nother show. That's a whole
Yeah.
nother
But it's real.
real. It's real, and it's all right. That you have to accept it, and it's like what do we learn? How do we move on? And how can we improve ourselves? Because I believe that life is about improving yourself. You are born to die, and in between, you have to live, and you have to learn, and you have to elevate. Um, and I always tell people, once you die, you're gonna learn something new.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
so that the whole spiritual aspect of, and that's what we brought, and it was a lot of fun because people bring their own theories, and it was just after we would just sit there. People come into the store, buy one thing, but they're sitting for 4 hours in conversation, and then
Yep.
people come into the store be like, "What are they talking about? Oh, wait a minute, I'm Christian, and I'm Muslim, and I practice Buddhism, and it was just that type of environment. It was great.
I remember being in there for hours, and like you say, people would come in, like say they buy one thing, and then it turns into almost like a powwow. People talking, and
And
I
it
I
wasn't
remember
about
being in there for like about 4 hours.
yeah, and it wasn't always about native culture. It was just about just general things.
True.
Just because everybody knew that you know what it's like being in a barber shop.
Mhm.
Talk
Right.
about things. You could just talk about things, but it always started from a cultural aspect, and then
Yeah.
we took it from there. And it
Mhm.
wasn't about African sometimes. It was about Asian sometimes. It was about religion sometimes, and
Mhm.
and that's what made it really a cultural center.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Stephen, man, this is not the first time. I hope. I mean, it's not going to be the only time that I hope that you're going to be on the show. I hope to have you on again.
Oh man, thank you for the opportunity. It's really good to see you, man. Again, it's been years, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to being on the show again and keeping you abreast of stuff that we're doing and everything else, and get you to come down and see the program a little bit and hang
Okay.
out with us again.
It sounds good, man. I would love it. I would love it. Yeah. So that's good, man. So yeah, just hold tight backstage, and I'm gonna close out the show.
Again, brother, thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome. Hold on. Okay, folks. Man, that was a real treat. Brings back a lot of memories, and I thank all that tuned in. And for those who are watching, if you haven't done so yet, hit the like button. It doesn't cost you anything. If you enjoyed what you were listening to, you know, hit that thumbs up. Okay. For those who are new, who are viewers and have never seen the show before, subscribe as well. It doesn't cost you a dime. Okay. So now I'm going to close out the show, and I'm going to say until the next time, da da da, gahan e.